It's episode 611 of the Locked On Rangers podcast. On today's show, I'm talking about a horrible, rain-filled Rangers game and which Rangers might make the All-Star team. All that and more on this episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On the Texas Rangers. I'm Bryce Patrick, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan since 2010, host and founder of this podcast for all 4 seasons. Today is Thursday, June 9th. Your Rangers are 26-30, sitting at second in the American League West. Well, that's according to Baseball Reference, which does it according to losses. So the Rangers have fewer losses than the Angels, who have lost 14 in a row, including last night after firing their manager. They decided to make all their players walk up to Nickelback songs, and shocker, that didn't work. But thank y'all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. If you're not already, you can go ahead and follow me on Twitter at Bryce Patrick. You can follow the show at Locked On Rangers and subscribe on YouTube, where the best way you can help is subscribe there and comment anything below. Now, I don't want to talk about this game, but I have to. And first I want to talk about, I'm going to delay talking about this game because you know what? There's a lot of delays in this game. There was a 15-minute delay to start the game, then a 30-minute delay in the middle of the game, and delays in all 3 games, or at least all 3 days of this series in Cleveland. So glad the Rangers are getting out of Cleveland. Garbage city, garbage rain, garbage stadium. Just sucks. It just sucks. But I'm sure Marcus Semien is not happy to be leaving there. He didn't have the best game yesterday, but again, that doubleheader where he went 7 for 8 with 3 home runs and a walk and 2 stolen bases, and one of the greatest doubleheader performances in Rangers history. First time anyone had had at least 3 home runs in a doubleheader for the Rangers since the 1980s. That was pretty incredible. 7 hits, also ties the most hits for a Rangers player in a doubleheader, which was incredible. But there was a lot less offense in this third game. Also, the Rangers only split the series because they have been really terrible with hitting with runners in scoring position. That trend continued in this one. They were 0 for 3. They have 1 hit with runners in scoring position in the last 5 games. They went 0 for 6, 1 for 2, 0 for 6, 0 for 6, 0 for 3. That is 1 for, I believe, 23, if my math is correct, over the last 5 games. That's not good. They were 2 for 8 in the game before that, so it's not like I'm just chopping off the sample size. It's been bad for a while in the month of June. They need to fix that. They cannot just rely on the home run ball. We saw what happened when they don't have home runs and they don't hit with runners in scoring position. They get a 0 on the board, an absolute 0. Now, I'll give them a little bit of a pass because they were facing Shane Bieber, who pitched 4 in the 3rd inning, struck out 6, and only allowed 3 hits, didn't walk anybody. Solid work for him, but the Guardians lost him after 54 pitches because they decided to delay the game for 15 minutes. I don't know why. There was no rain going on there, and the hard rain wasn't supposed to hit until around 8 o'clock Central Time. So they delay the start of the game so they will be less far into the game by the time the hard stuff hits. So that if say they happen to go 4.5 innings, that's long enough for it to be called official and them to not have to schedule a makeup game or, take the Rangers off day today and do that. But no. And when the game got delayed, they were 2 outs away from that. They were 2 outs away. But no, they had to delay it 15 minutes because there was no rain. Instead of moving it up and starting it earlier, I don't know. They're just some absolute mess of game management, of rain management, of everything management on the part of Cleveland. But it didn't really matter. The Rangers had runners on first and second when the game was delayed, and they come back and just absolutely poo-poo their chances as the best chance that they've had in the game so far. But when they come back, they had Adolis Garcia singled to start the top of the inning. Jonah Heim struck out, and then Nathaniel Lowe singled, get runners on first and second. Then the game was delayed. In comes Ezekiel Duran. He's got runners on first and second. All right, let's see what we can do. And boom, Adolis Garcia picked off at second base. You cannot do that. There was another bad misjudgment, I should say, on the base paths. I don't know why Nathaniel Lowe is trying to steal bases, but he did, and he got thrown out by Austin Hedges, who is a really darn good defensive catcher. And again, instead of having a chance with more runners on base or runners in scoring position or whatever for Ezekiel Duran, he did not get that. But then Duran strikes out and the inning is over, and there goes pretty much all of the Rangers' chances. There weren't many hits the rest of the time. Marcus Semien struck out in the sixth. Perfect inning for them. Did have a couple more chances in the top of the seventh inning. Adolis Garcia singled and Jonah Heim doubled him to third, and Nathaniel Lowe, right when they're talking about, oh, this is the best chance that the Rangers have had all day, immediately grounds out to the first baseman, Josh Naylor, to pitcher Inye De Los Santos. So, yeah, the Rangers were not having it. They were not doing well in this one. But on the plus side of Adolis Garcia getting picked off at second base, that meant the Rangers had one fewer at bat with runners in scoring position to add to their over. It would have been over 4 if Adolis wasn't picked off there. Well, maybe they would have had another chance to have somebody else hit after that. But again, after Ezekiel Duran, it was Steele Walker, and Steele Walker hasn't done a whole lot in his first few games at the major level. Does have 1 home run. That's pretty much the only thing he's done. Went over 3 in this one. Has an 0.83 batting average after, I believe it's 4 games in the major league level. And Eli White had another 0 for day. I feel like he's 0 for his last 162, but that's not essentially accurate. But in his last 7 games, he has 1 hit, so he's 1 for his last 17. That's an 0.59 batting average, on base, and slugging percentage, because he doesn't have a walk in that time either, and has struck out 7 times in his last 17 plate appearances. But despite that, he still has 3 stolen bases in his last 7 games. Kind of crazy. Every time he gets on, he's stealing and doing his best to make his threat or make his presence known on the base paths, because offensively, that's about all he's doing right now. He's not walking like he was earlier in the season. He's not hitting the ball hard. I remember his first 19, 20 plate appearances in the big league level. He was hitting the baseball hard and just getting extremely, extremely, extremely unlucky. Now he's not really hitting the baseball hard. He's just striking out a whole bunch and not getting on. But still, that ridiculous defense in the outfield is providing some value, but just not quite to the level of what you would want from a guy who's starting pretty much every day. Now, Leody, could he be better than this? At this point, I don't know. But if you do that, you got to be absolutely sure that Leody Taveras is going to be ready for those everyday plate appearances and is going to provide more value. I think he's a little bit better on his routes. He's not quite as fast as Eli White, but it's not a huge drop-off. I mean, Eli White is one of the fastest players in baseball, but Leody Taveras is pretty darn fast too. I think Leody's got a little more pop. I trust his plate approach. Well, I trusted his plate approach more until he had that absolutely horrendous big league stint last year, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what kind of decision will be made there, but Eli White is on the Rangers All-Star ballot. I don't think he's going to be one of the Rangers that could make the All-Star team. There's a few of those guys. I'm going to get into them, what their competition is, and what they would have to do to make the All-Star team this season. But first, this episode is brought to you by Built Bar. Don't you love a chewy brownie? What about a caramel brownie with caramel swirled on top? So good. What if I told you can have all that in a chewy, chocolatey deliciousness plus 17 grams of protein? You're in luck, because caramel brownie bars are available at Built.com right now, and you got to act fast because they are a fan favorite. Forget about dessert. These are better than dessert. Plus, the macros are unreal. 130 calories, 17 grams of protein, and only 4 grams of sugar. I'd replace a regular brownie with Built's caramel brownie bar in a heartbeat. The best part? Caramel brownie bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. Like, for real. With Built, you don't have to worry about sacrificing taste for something that's healthy. You can get both. So our listeners, you can go to Built.com, use promo code LOCK15 to get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. Now, thank you all so much for listening. We have an important favor to ask you. We put together a survey so we can learn more about you and listeners like you, and make your favorite Locked On podcast even better. This is your opportunity to tell us what you like and don't like about Locked On Podcast. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey right now to get started. It won't take very long, and everyone that completes the survey can qualify for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Ticketmaster gift cards. To take our audience survey, go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey. Thanks for your help. Now, let's look at which Rangers could be All-Stars. We're going to get one off the bat that there's no fan voting for, which I don't really get, but I don't really love fan voting in general, because that's how you get a crap ton of Kansas City All-Stars, even when they're a garbage team, or you get, I don't know, too many Houston players. Now, part of that is because Houston is good. Part of that is because their fans vote a whole lot. So Rangers fans should just be like them and vote our mediocre players in, and then I will be, well, I'll probably still complain a little bit about fan voting. But let's get one off the bat. There's no voting for pitchers, which I don't really get why there's no voting for pitchers. If you're going to vote for all the other players, why don't pitchers get to be on there? Doesn't make any sense. I don't understand it, but you know what? I'm not going to complain, because there's no way on God's green earth, unless Martin Perez just goes out and drops a turd in his next 3-4 starts. Even then, I still think what he did in the first 2 months of the season should be enough to make him an All-Star, maybe even the All-Star starter. He was the American League Pitcher of the Month for the month of May, where he was absolutely phenomenal, doing things that haven't been done since Johan Santana was on the Twins back in 2004. Absolutely incredible month. Right now, he's got a 1.56 ERA, which is second in the American League to old nasty Nestor Cortez. That mustache power is giving him some supreme superpowers, and he is doing very, very well. But 11 starts, 69 and a third innings, which I think is pretty darn nice. His ERA plus is 2.58. His FIP is 248, his ERA plus, and his FIP is 253. He is allowing less than a base runner per inning, less than 7 hits per 9 innings, only 0.1 home runs per 9 innings, only has that 1 home run in these 69 innings, walking about 2 batters per inning, or per 9, not 2 batters per inning. That would be quite terrible. But he's just been so darn good. He has not been allowing a lot of base runners. Even when he is, it doesn't really matter, because he's not allowing them to score. He's not allowing anybody to score, whether there's base runners on or base runners off. It's just absolutely nails for Martin Perez this season. Even his bad starts are still darn good. His last quote-unquote bad start for his really ridiculously high standards was 6 innings and 2 runs and I believe 7 strikeouts, and I think he walked maybe one batter. That's a really darn good start, and for that being your bad start, that shows how dang good he has been this year. He's an absolute slam dunk. On the other side of pitching, I don't think John Gray is going to get it. I don't think he's going to get it. I don't think Dane Dunning's going to get it, because he had a really, really rough outing in the last game. 4 innings, 4 earned runs, but some really solid work from the pen, including Matt Bush, Matt Moore, and Brock Burke, who I think should be the Rangers' second pitching All-Star. He has been fantastic for the Rangers this season. He is right up there on the leaderboard in terms of WAR. He is 4th on this team in Baseball Reference WAR at 1.2. You look at him compared to some of the other relievers in the American League, and Michael King is the WAR leader at 1.4. According to Fangraphs WAR, he is only worth 0.8 WAR, according to Fangraphs WAR, Brock Burke, that is. But that is 4th among American League relievers, behind Michael King, Clay Holmes, both of those guys of the Yankees, and Jason Adam of the Rays. But in terms of ERA, he is right up there with the best. His 0.9 ERA is better than Michael King. It's not quite as good as Clay Holmes, who is the leader at 0.34. JP Feyereisen of the Rays has a 0 ERA. That is, yeah, it's hard to get lower than that. There's not a negative ERA. If there was, then, I don't think any of these Rangers or anybody would have it. But either way, he is ahead of Eli Morgan, who the Rangers just saw yesterday from Cleveland, and he is ahead of Emmanuel Clase in terms of ERA, in terms of WAR, and all that good stuff. His expected ERA, according to Fangraphs, is way higher than I think it should be. His expected ERA is 3.71, and he is just straight up better than that. He has been one of the better relievers in all of baseball. He has been a multi-inning guy, and I have absolutely loved what I've seen out of him this year. It's been completely surprising, but his advanced numbers are also pretty darn good. His strikeout rate is in the top 13% of baseball, even though nobody's chasing at it. He's an absolute anomaly, so some of these advanced numbers, they look pretty decent. His expected ERA is in the 63rd percentile. Nobody's barreling him up. No one's hitting him very hard. His expected WOBA, expected slugging, both of those are in the top 40% of baseball, and he's not walking a whole bunch of guys. He's not getting a whole bunch of swings and misses or chases, but he is getting a bunch of strikeouts. So it's kind of the inverse of what Corey Seager is doing. Corey Seager is swinging and missing a lot for with 0 and 1 strikes, but it comes to strike 2, he's not striking out a lot. Brock Burke is the pitcher equivalent of that. He's not getting guys to swing and miss and chase a whole lot on 0 and 1 strike counts, but on 2 strike counts, that's when he gets them to chase. That's when he gets them to expand the zone, and he gets those strikeouts at a very, very high rate. I have loved what I've seen from him, and he has been absolutely dominant. I don't know that the Rangers should try him as a starter. I think some of these advanced numbers might start to catch up with him, but again, I don't know. His average fastball velocity is 95, which is not what he was doing as a starter, which, again, he's a multi-inning reliever, so that velo is going to jump up a little bit, and that is what you want. That is what you expect from these guys. He has been the Rangers' best reliever, and I say that knowing that he is not the closer. The closer is a more specific role, and he is leading the team in WAR from pitchers that are not Martin Perez, including the starters. A little bit better than Dennis Santana, according to Baseball Reference WAR, even though Santana, I think he has an outside shot of 1.33 ERA in 20 and 2/3 innings. But Santana's not striking anybody out. 11 strikeouts in 20 and 2/3 innings, despite how nasty his stuff is. A little surprising. He hasn't allowed a home run. One of the only regularly used Rangers relievers who has not allowed a home run. The only other one on this rotation that has it, or in this bullpen that hasn't, is Matt Moore, which, again, very surprising, but also very encouraging. Matt Moore's ERA has ballooned up to 2.96 as opposed to the 1.3 or whatever it was a couple weeks ago. That's fine. I don't think he's going to get a chance to be one of the Rangers All-Stars, especially with his high walk rate, even though he's been very effective. Very effective, I'll take that. All-Star would be a cherry on top, and I don't think that's necessarily something that's going to happen for him. But I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, I'm going to look at the Rangers hitters that I think could be All-Stars and what they need to do to get there. But first, this word from our sponsors. Now, let's take a look at which Rangers hitters are going to be All-Stars. I just said that Martin Perez and Brock Burke are probably the best and only hope for the Rangers in terms of All-Stars at pitchers. Every team is guaranteed an All-Star, even the pity teams, even the bad teams. I'm curious to see. Well, actually, I'm not that curious. I'm pretty sure Oakland's is going to be one of their 2 really darn good starting pitchers, so it won't be as bad of a pity All-Star as when Jason Castro was selected when the Astros were intentionally losing 177 games per season in their tanking years, and he had like an OPS of 700 or something and was just like fine. But I don't think there's going to be nearly that many embarrassing pity All-Stars this year, because every team has at least one guy that you can at least kind of squint and deserve into it. But in terms of hitters, well, this Rangers offense, even though it's been putting up decent numbers as of late, there's not a whole lot of guys that I think are going to do it. I mean, you would think, obviously, Corey Seager, but he's been an absolute free fall for the last month or so. Marcus Semien started in the free fall and is coming back out of it, but we need to continue this absolutely torrid pace. And then you look around and you got Adolis Garcia. If you want him to go for the outfield, you got to go against Mike Trout, against Taylor Ward, against Aaron Judge, against Giancarlo Stanton. All those guys are having absolutely phenomenal seasons, and I don't think that he is going to pass them unless he does what Marcus Semien did in the doubleheader for about 2 weeks straight. Then he would start to be in some of those conversations. But as of right now, he's having a solid season, but I don't think that he is going to be one that you can consider in there. Sam Huff hasn't played enough. Cole Calhoun, if he did what he did for that 3-week stretch where he was absolutely red hot in the month of May, if he continues that, then maybe he could be in that conversation. But even when he was in the middle of that torrid streak, there was still, the other guys were doing just much better than him in terms of Mike Trout and Taylor Ward and old Aaron Judge. Even Giancarlo Stanton was doing better than him during his hottest of hot streaks that I didn't think was sustainable. It was still nice to get him back to a sort of baseline number from what you would expect from him. But again, you got to start and look at Jonah Heim. He is the best case, the best hope that the Rangers have for being an All-Star, because he has been absolutely fantastic this season. He's fallen off a little bit as of late, but he's still putting up really dang good numbers. In his last 7 days, he's still got an OPS of 833. He is bringing him back out. In the last 28 days, he's starting to fall off after a torrid start. Last 28 days, he had a slash line of 207, 235, and 432. That's a 638 OPS. Now, in the last 7 days, he's got an OPS of 804, slugging 480, on base of 324. He's got, where do you go? Yeah, excuse me. That was his entire numbers. In the last 7 days, he's got an OPS of 833. He's slugging 556, got a homer and 2 doubles in 5 games played. He's batting 278. Does not have a walk in the last 7 days. Would like to see him get back to having more of those walks. And you look at his advanced numbers. His advanced numbers were very, very high in pretty much everything. Right now, the highest he's got is pitch framing. He is in the 98th percentile. He is in the top 2% of baseball at framing pitches. We knew he was good at that last year. But man, he has really stepped up and been even better at it this year. I think his arm, I feel like every time that I see someone trying to steal on him, they have gotten away with it. Now, I don't know if part of that is just the Rangers pitchers not being super great about holding guys on. Martin Perez is good about holding runners and not letting them get too far into it. But you look at some of his other advanced numbers, it's all in the kind of red to pinkish area, everything except for the expected batting average, expected WOBA, and sprint speed. He's not very fast. He's a catcher. Who cares? But he's barreling pitches up pretty well. His max exit velocity is in the top, around the top quarter of baseball, average exit velo in the top half, hard hit percentage, walk percentage, strikeout rate, chase rate, whiff rate, barrel percentage, all those in the top half of baseball. So where they were is in the top 10-15% of baseball for the first month, but he has really fallen off those last 28 days. If he can continue hitting the ball really hard and having some quality plate appearances, I think he has a chance there. Now, the fact that he's even in this All-Star conversation, and he's right there with Alejandro Kirk. In case you didn't know, Alejandro Kirk is the catcher for Toronto, and he has had a absolutely fantastic season. You look at some of his advanced numbers, even just his regular numbers, they're about where Jonah Heim was, if not better. His expected WOBA, expected batting average, strikeout rate, whiff rate, expected all of these guys in the top 8% of baseball with the strikeout and whiff rate in the top 2%. He's in the top 7% of framing, so Jonah Heim's pretty much only got him there. And in sprint speed, where he is in the bottom 6% of baseball, so he's a little bit faster than Alejandro Kirk, who is 5'8", 245 pounds, and just 23 years old. He is absolutely crushing it. He does have a higher OPS than Jonah Heim on the season. OPS is 878 in 172 plate appearances. Now, if you look at Jonah Heim, his OPS is at 809 in 142 plate appearances. So a little bit more of a sample size for Alejandro Kirk, who has been the primary starter since the start of the season. Jonah Heim was the backup guy, but until Mitch Garver got hurt, he was that, and now he is the primary guy. But you still want to get Sam Huff a few at-bats and not put too big of a load on Jonah Heim. But other than him, those are the only two catchers that have an OPS over 800. It is not a strong catching field. The normal suspects are not doing super great. Salvador Perez has a 645 OPS. Gary Sanchez is just over 715. Max Dassey's been doing all right. And Jose Trevino has been doing absolutely fantastic, hitting 281 with 4 home runs and a 794 OPS for the Yankees. Now, it's a smaller sample size than what Jonah Heim or Alejandro Kirk are doing, but again, having a really solid season. Tom Murphy, in a very tiny sample size, has an 894 OPS. I don't think that's enough to bump either of these guys off. That is the leader among catchers, but again, very tiny sample size, so not really a guy who I think is going to compete with that. But there aren't that many guys that have an OPS over 700, even over 750 in terms of these catchers. Yazmani Grandahl is off to a pretty terrible start, honestly. An OPS under 500, only 2 home runs, batting 165. That is a little concerning for the White Sox, and I'm sure part of the reason why they're struggling. We'll see him this weekend in the 3-game series. But yeah, that is pretty much where it is. For him, he is pretty much second, I think, in this race. If he has a hot month of June, heats up like he did in April, then I think that he could pass Alejandro Kirk. I don't necessarily know that much about Kirk and how sustainable this might be. I mean, last year he was fine, a 764 OPS in 60 games, hit 8 home runs. It was fine. And then in 9 games in 2020, as a 21-year-old catcher who was already in the big leagues, that's pretty darn impressive. Had a 983 OPS. Again, 25 plate appearances. A little bit of a small sample size there. But he is hitting the crap out of the baseball. He is providing a whole lot of value to Toronto, and part of the reason why they already have 30 wins and are doing so dang well. But Jonah Heim can catch him. He's got a lot of value. He's got a big bat that is hitting the ball really hard, putting together some really nice plate appearances, and providing a whole lot of value defensively. I think that if he plays more games than Alejandro Kirk and continues to have that hot streak and does not have another slumping month like he did in May, then that would be huge for him. And if not, then he could definitely be the backup catcher. I think he might end up being in that role, but I think he's got a good shot and probably should be an All-Star this year with how well he's done, unless somebody else on this list absolutely goes off and passes him, or he just kind of falls off a cliff like he did in that stretch in May. But I think he's got it. I think he should be an All-Star. But some of the other guys, in terms of the big names, Marcus Semien, there's a chance there. If he continues to do what he's doing right now for the last 7 days or 2 weeks or so, then maybe he can get back into that conversation. In his last 14 days, he's got an OPS over 1,000, 1089, 6 home runs in the last 14 games for him, 6 walks to 7 strikeouts, a slash line of 339, 394, 695. That will freaking play. If he can continue that kind of a stretch over another 2-week span and then another 2 weeks, so basically the entire month of June leading up to this All-Star break, then I think he can get back in that conversation, because nobody's doing that well at the moment at second base. I mean, they're doing okay, but nobody is absolutely crushing it, running away with it like they are at third base and in the outfield. But right now you've got guys like, the OPS leader is 2 guys that are tied. Andres Jimenez at 380 or 885, hitting 310, 7 homers, and then Jose Altuve, who's got 11 homers and an 885 OPS. Nobody else has an OPS over 800 in terms of the second baseman in the American League. Santiago Espinal from Toronto has a 797 OPS with a 290 average and 5 homers. But other than that, not a whole lot going on offensively. Not that many players even have an OPS over 750. You got Trevor Story there. You got Gleyber Torres. But both of those guys are 5 and 3 points above 750 on their OPS respectively. Now, Trevor Story did start the season quite horribly and had that week where I believe he hit all 9 of his home runs or something crazy like that. Just an absolutely insane tear for him. But we know Marcus Semien's capable of those tears, and we've seen him go on one. If he continues that, then maybe he can get back into this conversation. I'm not exactly sure that he will. He might make the second or third All-Star second baseman slot. But the guy who really needs to get it is the shortstop, because there is not a whole lot of guys at shortstop that are absolutely crushing it in terms of the American League. But there are a few guys. Right now, Tim Anderson is my leader. He is the guy who I would vote for at the moment, hitting 356 with 5 home runs and 896 OPS. Absolutely destroying baseballs, hitting a bunch of doubles, playing a bunch of really good defense at shortstop, and getting on base at a absolutely ridiculous clip. Xander Bogaerts is also doing really darn well, hitting 319, 6 home runs, and an 862 OPS on the season. J.P. Crawford's also done pretty well, and Jeremy Pena over in Houston has been absolutely outstanding as a rookie, and I'm pretty darn sure he was going to make the All-Star team, an OPS of 793. But Corey Seager has 11 home runs, which leads all of these guys in terms of home runs. Bo Bichette is close with 9 home runs, but other than that, nobody else is super close. Not a whole lot of power hitting shortstops in the American League right now, although Jeremy Pena does have 8 home runs. But right now, Corey Seager's batting .223. All the people who are yelling me about Marcus Semien's batting average, why are you not yelling at me about Corey Seager's batting average? He's got an OPS under 700, but his advanced numbers, again, like I said yesterday, they all point to about where he would normally be. I don't know what's going wrong with him at this point, but he needs to find out what it is, and he's hitting the baseball hard, and he's walking a decent amount, and he's not striking out a whole bunch. He just needs to figure out what the heck is going wrong and do better. He cannot afford to have a slumping month of July if he wants to make the All-Star team. But again, it's up to him. He's the Rangers' second best player in terms of WAR at 1.3. I'm sure he's up there among the shortstops in terms of leaders. He's only made 2 All-Star appearances in his career. Didn't make the All-Star team last year. It was mainly because he missed a big chunk of time. He didn't make the All-Star team in 2019 when he had 44 doubles, led baseball, had an 817 OPS while playing 134 games as a 25-year-old. And he didn't do it in 2018 when he was hurt and only played 26 games. And he didn't do it in 2020 because there was no All-Star team. But he would have been an All-Star that year. So, again, he really needs to get it done, be a 3-time All-Star. That starts to look really darn good on his resume. If he has a really hot month, if he starts heating up at the same time Marcus Semien starts heating up and they start playing these not as great teams, then it's going to be much, much better for this Rangers squad. They've got a series against Houston. They've got a series against the White Sox. So the next week or so is not going to be super great. But after that, they got Philadelphia. They got Washington. They've got the Royals to end the month of June. So the final week of June, when he's making his push, they're going to be facing some pretty darn bad teams and with some really darn bad pitching in terms of Kansas City. They've been horrendous at developing pitchers. So maybe that's when he and Jonah Heim and Marcus Semien all make their push. In terms of anybody else on this team, Nathaniel Lowe, you got to go up against Vladdy Guerrero Jr. and against Ty France, who has been absolutely fantastic. I don't think he has a chance. But shortstop, second base, you got to squint there. But catcher. That's where the Rangers want to do their damage. In terms of DH, Yordan Alvarez has been absolutely incredible. Mitch Garver has been an absolute free fall for the last 2 weeks, and I don't think that he is going to become an all-star there. It's just probably not going to happen. But I think the Rangers have two legitimate hopes at pitcher, one lock at pitcher, one pretty good hope, and another pretty good hope at catcher. Other than that, if the Rangers get 3 All-Stars, I'll be happy. If they get 4, I'll be ecstatic. If they get 5, I will be out of my freaking mind. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think they get 4. I think they could get 3. I think Brock Burke might get snubbed because he is overlooked and not in the traditional closer role that gets overlooked a whole lot. But he is providing a crap ton of value, and I think that he most definitely should be an all-star, as should Jonah Heim and as should Martin Perez. Corey Seager, Marcus Semien, the next month, it's up to you. You got about a month to change everybody's minds and to put yourself on the radar, back among the best players in baseball where you should be. Thank you all so much for listening to today's episode. On tomorrow's show, I'm going to preview or just put out my initial All-Star ballots for the American League and for the National League. I'll have probably 1 or 2 more ballots before they go official. I'm going to wait a few weeks, try and make these at least a little bit special and look a little bit at what the farm has been doing for the last week with Ezekiel Duran called up to the big leagues and with Josh Smith also called up to the big leagues and hurt. Thank you all so much for listening. Until next time, don't forget to enjoy baseball.